Well, good morning. Excuse me. It's the morning of Wednesday, 31st of May, 2019, and I'm delighted to be able to say that it really is the end of May. But who will be the next hapless clown to take over the mantle of leadership of the Tory party and, of course, by definition, Prime Minister of the UK? Well, the reality is that whomever it is that gets elected by the Tory party membership is unlikely to have any real idea of the total lack of autonomy afforded to the office of Prime Minister in this country. The reality is that the office of Prime Minister is absolutely controlled by the establishment. And of course, Gordon Brown epitomised this. Despite living next door to Tony Blair for 11 years, he never fully appreciated how little autonomy Blair had until he actually took on the mantle. And of course, he was a broken man because he realised that, after little more than a year or so in the job, that he was completely helpless, and everything was effectively dictated by the civil servants and the lobbyists, and it's effectively a role that's purely figurehead. And of course, the purpose of the Prime Minister for the moment is to kick the EU can down the road as far as possible. And of course, if this continues, then it would certainly ensure that Nigel Farage would absolutely clean up in a general election. And I think you'd find that probably the Brexit party had the biggest majority of any parliament in history. Well, of course, the reality is that it's unlikely that there will be an election until 2022. So, that's another 3 years in which the can be kicked down the road and the country can be left in literally a state of abeyance. And that must not be allowed to happen. Right now, the people of the UK have been extremely tolerant and, watching obviously what's going on in France. But, we haven't yet seen that level of civil unrest in this country. But if any politician thinks for 1 minute that that isn't likely to be the case, if Brexit isn't delivered, then they are delusional. And we know that the vast majority of MPs live in a bubble. They live in the bubble of London and the South East. And of course, this is really the only area where the Brexit party didn't literally clean up. And, the Remainers argue that actually the vote for the Remain parties was higher. But that ain't the way the British electoral system works, whether you like it or not. The reality is that the vote to leave was a majority, arguably just. I would say that it was greater and manipulated downwards, but nonetheless, it was a majority. And now, with the results from the EU referendum, that was effectively your people's vote. So, you can either keep bitching and whinging and moaning, or you can do something constructive, which is to work towards finding the system of government that we actually need in this country to be effective after Brexit. But don't hold your breath. The reality is that until such time as people start to hold their elected representatives' feet to the fire, then, we probably won't see much change, and the politicians will continue to live life high on the hog whilst completely ignoring the will of the people, and certainly not taking account of their health and well-being. And of course, we haven't just got the Brexit issue to deal with now. We've got the issue of 5G. And yesterday, EE were bragging that they switched on 5G in 5 cities. I believe that was Edinburgh, Cardiff, London, Belfast and Manchester. But it didn't go too well because the BBC tried to hook up using the new 5G network at 1 o'clock, but it didn't go too well. Now, it wasn't as bad as in Korea, where coincidentally 2 days after the 5G switch on, there was an outbreak of fires across the country. So far, we don't seem to have had to endure that tragedy. But nonetheless, it would seem that the 5G didn't actually deliver on what it was supposed to yesterday. But, there's 5 cities now that I should be, if I have to go there, I should be dipping in and out as quickly as possible. Because, the irony is that this 5G rollout comes under the auspices of the Department of Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, which seems a bit of a contradiction in some ways. So the digital 5G rollout is their department, but also sport. So what's the new sport here? Seeing which of the 5G locations can get the number of cancer sufferers up, or the number of kids with nosebleeds, or the numbers of spontaneous abortions. You think this is all conspiracy? Well, the evidence is there, and this is why none of the telecoms companies and certainly none of the politicians want to engage about the risks of 5G. And this is exactly, of course, what we saw with fracking. The politicians just did not want to talk about any of the evidence that demonstrates that fracking is a process that causes massive contamination of soil, of water, of air, and leads to very, very significant negative health impact. And yet, in this country, they're still pretending that, there's going to be an unconventional gas industry. There isn't. It's pretty much dead in the water. But of course, it is beholden upon the targeted communities to keep up the pressure that they have been doing so now for the past few years to make sure that this industry does not get a foothold. Meanwhile, 5G doesn't just, of course, target a few areas across the north of England and a few pockets in the south. It targets the whole country. And don't think for 1 minute that the 16 cities that have been identified as trial cities for 5G, are the only areas where this technology is being rolled out. It is being installed right across the country. And basically the intention will be that they'll run the trials and they'll suppress any of the negative effects. And then they'll announce later this year that, that was such an amazing success of the 5G trials, we're going to roll it out right across the country. And at that point, we're in a whole world of hurt. But the good news is that 5G awareness groups are rising right across the country. And people are downloading the constitution of their local authority, and they are identifying from that constitution precisely who is responsible, either as a councillor or an officer, who is responsible for the health, safety and well-being of the community. Now, we've already heard that some councillors are saying, well, actually there's nothing we can do about it because this is a national infrastructure project. Yes, the rollout of 5G has been identified as a significant national infrastructure project, which is why the erection of 5G masts up to 75 feet in urban areas and 85 feet in rural areas do not require planning permission. But local communities are rising up, and we've seen in Totnes in South Devon where a mast was erected right alongside Dartington Primary School, and the parents basically said, we're not putting our children back into the school if that mast is active. And so I believe that they have been assured that the mast will not be switched on and the children are back at school. But, it is remarkable how many of these masts are being sited adjacent to schools. And yet the evidence that EMF, electromagnetic frequencies and radio frequencies, impact on the developing brain and physical vehicle much greater than that of the adult. So, maybe the children are the target here. Maybe the agenda is to impact on them as much as possible. And even the Daily Mail ran an article, I believe it was on April the 19th, Day of Sacrifice by Fire. Well, April the 19th, about a school in Ripon in the States, which had established a cancer cluster. And the only thing that had changed in the area was a phone mast being erected outside the school. So, this isn't something that just affects a few people in the north of England. This is right across the country. So, it really is beholden upon all of us to do the research into 5G. The industry themselves have stated at a US Senate hearing that there is not a single independent study which proves the 5G frequencies to be safe. And, let's not forget that this is a battlefield technology. It's a microwave battlefield interrogation technology that has been adapted for civilian usage. And, of course, has nothing to do with faster mobile speeds. It is directly related to the rollout of the Internet of Things and, of course, autonomous vehicles. So the local authorities are very much key to this. Many local authorities have outsourced responsibility for street lighting, but a lot of the street lighting, of course, is being replaced with these LED lights, which the University of Exeter and the Barcelona Institute for Global Health have established trigger increases in breast and prostate cancer. Not directly, but these LED lights with out blue light filters, then they impact upon the circadian rhythm, which impacts upon the hormonal balance, and it is hormonal imbalance which triggers prostate and breast cancer. So expect to see increases in both those cancers wherever the LED streetlights are rolled out, particularly as these LED streetlights are being sited right outside people's bedroom windows. So if that's the case, then you absolutely need to have blackout curtains in your room. But then, of course, the street furniture is also being used as the mounts for the 5G transmitters. And, on the basis that these transmitters are going to have to be every 300 meters, then rather than erect a whole bunch of other new masts every 300 meters, then obviously the idea is to use the existing infrastructure. And so expect that there will be bidding wars, and ask the local authorities, who is responsible? Is that something within the remit of the local authority, or have they farmed it out? Have they outsourced the responsibility? And will it be the outsourced companies that actually benefit from leasing the tops of their lampposts to the telecoms companies for their 5G transmitters? Well, elsewhere, it's reported that these 5G transmitters, when they are on the tops of the lampposts, remarkably, the aerials are being damaged in some way, shape or form, probably low-flying birds. And the inspection housings are miraculously being filled up with concrete. Now, who knows how that is happening, but nonetheless, obviously, anything that prevents this pernicious rollout or delays the rollout until common sense prevails must be deemed a benefit. So let's see how that rolls. And of course, the irony here as well is that, this is a technology which is proven to be carcinogenic, and yet the British government and Big Pharma, of course, continues its campaign to shut down anyone who develops an effective cancer cure. And I was delighted that David Noakes was able to join me on Humanity versus Insanity last night. And of course, we reported that Lynn Tyer's extradition order had been annulled by a common law court. And now the common law court documentation has been filed with the law courts. And of course, this is the unlawful legal courts. And now it's going to be very interesting to see how the legal system, the unlawful legal system, reacts to a lawful annulment of their extradition order. So, this is a great opportunity, and it's an opportunity for people perhaps to do a little bit of research into the common law courts and understand how the fraud of the legal system works to effectively keep everybody in abject slavery. So, as at the time of going to air this morning, the good news is that Lynn is still at liberty. And, Lynn is absolutely of the mindset that the extradition order has been annulled, and it is now between the courts of the establishment and the common law courts to determine who has legal supremacy. And the reality is that it is the common law court that has lawful supremacy. So watch this space. And by the way, the common law court also ruled that Judge Supperstone had acted unlawfully and should be immediately recused from his responsibilities of sitting as a judge. And clearly, and I was sitting in the appeal hearings, clearly he is corrupt, because the evidence was so lacking, in fact, that he should have dismissed the extradition order request from the French authorities outright. But no, he went along because the judiciaries need to be seen to supporting each other in European arrest warrants. So, Judge Supperstone should not be sitting over or presiding over any hearing, because he cannot be trusted to be impartial. So Justice Supperstone versus the Common Law Court, let's see how that unfolds. Well, finally today I'm going to make an observation about AV10 and AV11. And AV10 was a truly remarkable weekend. Of course, it was literally just 3 weeks ago. And, thank you for the accolade, because with just 3 weeks gone since AV10, there are literally only 12 rooms now remaining for residential tickets for AV11. So, this is remarkable. And, when I think back a few years ago where I was, panicking that we would actually be able to shift the number of rooms that I was committed to at the hotel. Now we take the whole hotel, and now it's pretty much sold out almost 11 months prior to the event. So this is also the last day at which the early bird ticket price will hold. So any tickets that still remain after today will be available at the full price from tomorrow morning. So call it a hunch, but I think that there probably won't be very many tickets left by tomorrow morning. So, and of course, I haven't even begun to think about who will be speaking at AV11, because so much can and will happen over the next year or so. And of course, the significance of AV events is that they are topical, they are on point, and that the speakers are not just pontificators, they are not just commentators, they are all active in some way in the quest to bring about the changes that we all know we need to see. So thanks for joining me this week. Thanks to those who tuned in to last night's episode of Humanity vs Insanity. Of course, we had to record it in the afternoon due to David's curfew kicking in at 7 p.m, which gave me the opportunity to get back up to my favourite spot in East Lancashire. So I'll be here for a few days now, and you have a great weekend, and join me on Monday morning at 8:30. But if you get bored over the course of the weekend, then download your council's constitution and see from that who in your local authority is responsible for your health, safety and well-being, and then confront them over the due diligence that they have undertaken to ensure that the 5G technology that's being rolled out in your area at some juncture over the next year or so is safe. Ask them to provide the studies, not just say, well, the World Health Organization have declared it safe. Let's see the studies, not the palliatives, not the dismissals. Let's see the evidence that proves it's safe. Because I'm telling you right now, there ain't none. And the industry themselves know there isn't any, which is why they don't want to be drawn into any discussion or debate on the issue. And if I'm wrong, then maybe the chief executive of EE or Vodafone will contact me and volunteer to debate this in public. Of course, I made the same offer 6 years ago to the CEOs of the fracking companies, and with no exception, did they take it up? And it'll be exactly the same with the telecoms companies. They will not participate in public debate, because they know the evidence is stacked against them, and they know that they cannot address the issues of health, safety and well-being as a result of their 5G rollout. In the world of commerce, cash is king, or revenue is king, and screw everyone else. All to play for, and we'll do it. Collectively, we'll do it. We've just got to have focus. You have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday morning.